Hey, seventh grade. This is Miss Boyd here going through The Outsiders. So this is chapters 1 through 3. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on chapter 1 because we read most of that together. And if you see me look down, I'm looking at my book so I can make sure I cover everything. But chapter 1, we read most of that together. Just remember that it's already been prefaced that Ponyboy doesn't fit the greaser stereotype in a lot of ways. So a big thing for you from chapter 1, make sure you know who your characters are and the Greaser gang. Make sure you understand Ponyboy's family and how he feels about each brother. And also the stereotypes that are in there, the Greasers versus the Socias. How does Ponyboy view them? Because this book is all about how people are lumped into groups just because of their social class, but just because they're lumped into a group doesn't mean they always fit the stereotypes. So at the end of chapter 1, we have kind of a picture of Ponyboy's house. You get to see Derry. He's tired most of the time. He works 2 jobs. And then you also see that Pony and Soda share a room and a bed. And so you can understand why they're closer because they spend a lot of time together. And you find out the secret that Soda's in love with Sandy and that he plans to marry her. He hasn't told Derry that, but he tells Ponyboy that. And then at the end of chapter 1, you see this section that's interesting where Pony is thinking about how much he loves Soda, but he thinks about Derry and he doesn't really care about Derry. And he says that he doesn't care about him at all. And that he doesn't love him, although he feels like that's a lie. So chapter 2 is all about the drive-in movie. So they meaning Pony and Johnny, go with Dally. Dally is the one that says they sneak into the drive-in movie because he never does anything by the law. He's all about breaking boundaries, almost kind of wanting people to push back at him because he's never had anybody love him enough to give him those boundaries. So they get there, and there are some girls sitting in front, and Dally says we don't know what he says, but we know it was enough to make Johnny leave to go to the concession stand. And Ponyboy want to literally disappear if he could. So you have one of those girls stand up to Dally and doesn't take anything from him. And to the point where he asks if they want a Coke from the concession stand, and she said she'd rather, dehydrate and starve to death than take anything from him. So Dally leaves to go get Cokes from the concession stand, and the 2 girls, Cherry, it's really Sherry, but she's called Cherry because she has the red hair, and Marcia, they're there. And they're socials, okay, social girls. And Cherry immediately looks at them, sizes them up, and knows that, she has nothing to worry about with the 2 of them. First with Pony because he's there, and then Johnny appears later from the concession stand. And she knows that she doesn't have to anticipate any issues with them. And you also find out that Cherry knows Ponyboy's brothers. He's got a reputation because they're both so good looking. And you also find out that Pony was moved ahead a grade. He shouldn't even be in high school, and he's already taken high school classes. So again, he doesn't fit the normal greaser stereotype. So as they're talking, and Johnny appears, and you have Dally come back, and again, he's rude to the girls. He gives them the Cokes he's bought, and Cherry, because she said she'd never take anything from him, throws that Coke in his face, and he gets this look, and immediately, and it takes Dally off guard. Johnny stands up and he says to leave the girls alone. Johnny never does that. And so even Dally is totally taken off guard. And it says, if it would have been anyone else, Dally would have laid him out right there. But Johnny and Dally have a special relationship. For Dally, Johnny is his only soft spot. That's it. And because of that, he walks away. And he never would have done that beforehand. Sorry, the phone's ringing. So, they're sitting there and they're talking. It's my uncle calling. So Cherry is glad that he left because she says Dally makes him a little nervous, or makes her a little nervous. But they invite the boys to sit with them, and they're talking, and you find out that although Johnny's older, 16, he looks younger. He's 14. Or he looks like he's 14. Sorry, I keep saying that wrong. The phone distracted me. So we know Pony's 14, but Johnny's 16, although he looks like he's 14, and he hates that. Okay. And Cherry knows that they're different. She can just tell. And Ponyboy says, sure, we're young and innocent. And she says, no, you're not innocent, because nobody growing up in their neighborhood is innocent. They've seen way too much to be innocent. But she says that as far as those two boys, they're too nice. They have a soft side, which is a good thing. And so Johnny sticks up for Dally. Remember, they have a relationship. Unlike the other ones with Dally, Johnny and Dally have a really special relationship, and that'll evolve as you read. And all of a sudden, as they're talking, you find out that Cherry and Marsha's boyfriends, Cherry got rid of them because they were drinking and she didn't approve of that. She didn't like that. So they left. And that's why the two girls are there by themselves. Well, not anymore. Now they're there with Johnny and Pony. So you have all of a sudden hands come down on their shoulders, and they think it's some social boys, but it's really not. It's Two-Bit just making a joke. And he forgets that it's Johnny, and he apologizes because Johnny literally is almost gasping for air. He's so scared. And you see that Two-Bit and Cherry and Marsha kind of hit it off because he's funny. I mean, he's Two-Bit. He always has jokes, okay? And they talk about, well, Two-Bit's really there to find out where Dally is, because you find out Tim Shepard and his gang, those are more along the lines of hoods, are looking for Dally because Dally took his blade to some of their tires. And for Two-Bit, as long as Dally doesn't have a knife or anything, he knows that it'll be a fair fight. And Cherry's just sitting there listening. She can't understand why in the world they would let, I mean, the fighting is a norm for them. Okay. And that's what she doesn't understand, because she doesn't like fighting. And for the Greasers, they've grown up where it's almost, not almost, it is normal for them. And as long as it's a fair fight and they deserve it, then they take it out on each other. And they know it's just payback. That's what they view it as. But with Greasers, it's always called jumping, because Greasers always have 4 of them, or with Socs and Greasers, it's always called jumping, because the Socs always have 3 or 4 against 1. And that's where it's not a fair fight. And Two-Bit makes that distinction when he's talking to him. Okay. So you have this little section where Pony goes with Cherry, and they're going to go to the concession stand, and you have some stories pop up here. You have the story with Soda, and you have the story why Johnny is the way he is. So you get how the guys discover Johnny, and he was beaten so badly that they almost couldn't recognize his face. And the reason was because there was a group of Socs that could get out of a blue Mustang, and one of the guys that beat him up pretty badly, one of the Socs had a lot of rings on his fingers, so it tore him up pretty badly. And ever since then, he's been afraid of his own shadow. Okay. And when he finishes that story, Cherry just stares at him, and she doesn't even know what to say. And finally, when she can speak, she wants Johnny to know that not all Socs are like that. Not all of them are. And just because they have money doesn't mean they have all the breaks. They have rough lives too. It's just a different type. Okay? And when they get back, Marcia and Two-Bit are there talking. They're getting along just fine. And then at that point, they're kind of sitting there, kind of hitting it off and watching the movie. Okay? So as they're sitting there, Marcia and the movie's going, you have Marcia and Two-Bit talking, and then Johnny and Pony and Cherry just enjoying the movie. And it's the first time he's ever been able just to sit with a girl and not have to talk with her or she talk, and they can just enjoy a movie together. Because remember, Pony loves movies, unlike most of the people in the greaser stereotype. So chapter 3 is where I'm at, and they're leaving the movie. Okay. And they're walking with Two-Bit and Johnny and Pony. Okay. And in this moment, you have Cherry talk about what she feels like is the difference between greasers and socias. And yes, money is part of it, but it's not everything. And she says greasers feel everything. They're very emotional. And she says for her, socias are too sophisticated to feel anything. And because they can't feel anything, they go and they search and they try to find something to satisfy them because they don't feel anything, which is why they go out and do the crazy things and drink and party and jump the greasers, because they're trying to feel something. They don't feel anything. And for her, that's what she feels separates them the most. Not money, but the emotional part. So in this little section, you have Pony realize he can talk to Cherry more than anyone he's ever felt or met in his life. And he tells the story about Mickey Mouse, the horse, and that horse was everything to Soda, but because they didn't have the money, the horse was eventually sold and it broke Soda. And so you see here the emotional side of a greaser, because they can't satisfy what they want whenever they want with money. Those things that are taken away break them like the horse. And you have this little section, and it talks about sunsets, and it kind of makes him kind of realize, in a sense, it makes him laugh a little bit that although they live on different parts of town and it seems like a world away, they all get to look at the same sunset. That doesn't separate them at all. And in our little section here, we have not the Corvette, the Mustang drive by, and it's their boyfriends, and they think they don't notice because they drive by, and they're kind of relieved. And then you have this section where Pony talks about Derry and how he can't stand him. He's harsh, he's cruel, he's mean, and he would get rid of him if it wasn't for Soda sticking up for him all the time. And the important part here is Two-Bit and Johnny's reaction. Both of them are staring at him like, that's not true. That you have it all wrong is what Two-Bit says. So remember, we get only Ponyboy's side. So this is a glimpse. Okay? Glimpse. Because both of them try to tell him, no, it's not true. It's not true at all. Okay? So in this section, you have Ponyboy crowd. It ain't fair. It ain't fair that we have all the rough breaks. I don't know exactly what it meant, but I was thinking about Johnny's father being cruel to him, Two-Bit's mother having to work several jobs to put them, support them because their father ran out. Dally because pushing the limits because he has no one to care. Soda, who's a dropout, so he can help them stay a family. All these tough things that the greasers or in their group have to go through because of just the tough things that have happened in their lives. And the kids having to deal with it in their own ways, whether it's Dally having to work and being harsh, and that's kind of how he takes out his anxiety and stress to Two-Bit not wanting to deal with it and wanting to always make jokes. So, in this section, after that, he kind of has that meltdown. The Mustang comes back. And as they get out of the Mustang and they're talking to the girls, you see Johnny get extremely nervous. And hopefully you picked up why. The blue Mustang and the social with the rings on his hand. So that tells you right there, these are the guys that are responsible for what happened to Johnny. And the only one who picks up on that, well, Johnny, of course, but Pony realizes it too. So Cherry and Marcia decide to eventually get in the car because Cherry's not, she doesn't want them to fight. She hates fighting. And Ponyboy makes sure before she leaves that he knows, or that she knows, he would never be able to use a broken pop bottle or hurt anyone. He just couldn't. It's not in his nature. He's not like the normal greasers. Okay? So the girls leave with him and she says, I could fall in love with Dallas Winston. I hope I never see him again, or I will. And that's kind of a strange statement. Why would this social girl she's beautiful, she's a cheerleader, why in the world would she say that about Dally? So be thinking about that. We're going to talk about that as we read. So Two-Bit leaves, and he got Marcia's number, although he's not going to use it. And then you're left with Pony and Johnny. They're two really good friends. And as they leave, they're talking about their the Socia's car and all of that. And they get to a point where they feel like they're about to break. They're about to snap. Okay? But for them, it's like they feel like they're stuck. And they just want to get out. And for Ponyboy, it's the country. And because it reminds him of his life before his parents died. And you get a picture of what his parents were like. And that his father was super kind, and that Derry had a super close relationship with him. And that's when Derry was kind, or at least he felt closer to Derry. So you can understand why Derry might be harsher now with the loss of his father. And then that his mother, he describes her as golden, and that she was the only one who could make Dally calm down, Dallas. She, besides Johnny, it's a soft spot that Dally had, and she was the only one who could speak into Dally and speak life into Dally, and it's really because she showed Dally what it was like to have somebody who cares about him, which is all he truly wants. And you find out through their just basically fantasizing of getting out of their lives where they're stuck, they fall asleep. And so, oh gosh, it's late. And Pony runs home, and Derry's freaking out. And at this point, Derry snaps. All the stress of everything snaps. And he barks at Soda, and in the heat of the moment, he slaps Ponyboy, and he just can't believe he's done that. It's like all of the tension just, he can't believe it. And in that moment, Ponyboy runs away, and he runs and catches up with Johnny, and he tells him what's happened because he's just overwhelmed with emotion and he's crying. And in that moment, it's kind of like they decide to walk together to calm down and to kind of let their emotions calm down, and they go to the park, and the last line says, things gotta get better, I figured. They couldn't get worse. I was wrong. So that foreshadows in the next couple chapters that they couldn't think it would get any worse than what's happened, especially Ponyboy between Derry. But what happens the next couple chapters definitely makes things worse. So that's chapters 1 through 3 of The Outsiders.